I just watched The Green Knight, and whew, it was a trip. The Green Knight is based off of the Arthurian story called Gawain and the Green Knight, which basically follows the same plot line and story, although just a little more detailed in the character's inner thoughts. As someone who's a film enthusiast, I'll be honest, I've never really watched any A24 films. But making this my first A24 film to really sit down and watch, I think it was a good experience. I would compare my watching experience of The Green Knight with Blade Runner 2049. You're just sitting back, relaxing, and vibing out with the movie and just sitting with it and taking in all the aspects and cinematic beautiness. So I went to the theater with a large bucket of popcorn and a large drink, and man, I felt like I was in a fever dream. I was so full of popcorn that watching it felt like it was a nightmare. Not in a nightmare as in it was terrible, but as in it felt like a fever dream. Not to mention all the visuals in Green Knight and all the odd stuff that happens in it. It was pretty trippy. Not to mention when you're full of popcorn and cherry Pepsi, it just feels like you're hallucinating. If you're gonna go watch The Green Knight, I don't know if I would recommend it to regular audiences. Cinephiles, yeah, sure. I would recommend it. There is a story that follows through, going beginning, middle, and end, but in a way it feels like it's a very segmented, old school movie, I guess you could say. Because the movie kind of follows a chapter section, just like in the short story. You basically get the start of Gawain as a knight by King Arthur, and then you get segments of each part of his journey up until he meets up with the Green Knight. And I swear, when I was watching this, I feel like the director is a big fan of Evil Dead, or it might just be me making the comparisons because I'm a big Evil Dead fan myself. And slight spoiler ahead, there's a scene where someone's head falls off, and it almost looks reminiscent of the scene from Evil Dead 2 with Ash holding onto Linda's head. And then there's another scene where Gawain is tired and resting, and then he's brushing dirt off of his hand, and then you can see his hand rotting away. And it's almost just like the Ash scene with his right hand rotting and taking control. Not to mention, there's also that panoramic shot that pans around. That just gave off the vibe of that scene in the woods where it pans all around the woods, the cabin, and then back to Ash. Yeah, I'm just seeing a lot of comparisons. Overall, I would go in expecting a visual experience. Not a lot of trippy stuff, but some very fantasy, like out of this world type thing. It doesn't go full high fantasy like compared to Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones. It keeps it almost still grounded with tad bits of fantastical elements. Like there'll be moments where you'll see one animal talk, but it's so surreal and so trippy that it doesn't seem like fantasy at all. Watching The Green Knight is like going into a dream that you can't wake up from. That's as best as I can explain it. It feels like a dream that you can't wake up from, and you're just gonna have to go through from beginning to the end until you wake up out of it. The cinematography is beautiful as expected with A24, but there are times where I'm kind of questioning, was this really necessary? Such as a whole dialogue scene where it's two characters going down a whole burnt village, and then they're talking to one another, but there's no cuts. There's times like that where I'm like, is it necessary? Probably not. Could have been done a little more different, but hey, that's the director's vision. I'm just kind of nitpicky there. And although I vaguely remember reading Sir Gawain and the Green Knight for college, I do remember the beginning and then what eventually happens in the journey he goes on. So I have a sense of where the story is going, but I don't know the moralistic themes and whatever behind it, other than the beginning part and how the character of Gawain gets into the situation he gets into. Overall, I think it's a good visual film. It's also got its own fantasy flair to it, and it is enjoyable if you like these kind kind of weird, moody pieces of film, especially those with like a lot of emphasis on cinematography, short dialogue. Feels like you're reading a comic book or even storybook at times too, which I can see what they were trying to go with, especially with how the King Arthur stories are very fairy tale like. I rate The Green Knight a 7 out of 10. I give The Green Knight a 7 out of 10 because the visuals, the simple story, the special effects, especially coming from the Green Knight and his practical costume, which you can clearly see all the designs put into, and all that weird fantasy stuff that makes you feel like you're in a dream is just so surreal. That's all I can put into words. Was it mind-blowing? Not really. But was it a good experience in the theater? Oh yeah, it was. I would recommend it only to cinephiles, since cinephiles can really immerse themselves into dissecting each and every aspect of the story and seeing what themes lay here or what message lays here. All that other stuff. General audiences, I think you could like it, but if you're looking for something more actiony, you're not really gonna find it. You're more looking at a physical, spiritual journey rather than a Lord of the Rings type journey where, oh, you're fighting this orc here or this creature here, meeting this wizard here. No, it's not really that kind of fantasy film. And that was my review for The Green Knight. Once it comes out on a home video, oh jeez, once it comes out on home media, I'll probably rewatch it a few times and analyze it and probably try to make a video essay out of it, since I think there's a lot of material you could pull from it and try to analyze, because it's almost like Dante's Inferno in a way. But then, I'm getting ahead of myself. I would probably start making a whole video essay if I just continue on with one point of what I thought it would be. But yeah, 7 out of 10, Green Knight. I'd recommend it to cinephiles. General audience, if you're interested in trying to watch some other film, aside from the usual big box office movies, give it a try.